Some people only see weakness because they've never dared to survive anything. What would you do if silence spoke louder than a scream? Let us know in the comments section below. Miranda Lawson didn't limp because she wanted attention. She walked that way because the blast in Kabul had nearly torn her left leg off. 8 surgeries, metal rods, a foot that would never flex again, and a hip that buzzed in cold weather like some kind of broken tuning fork. That's why she moved the way she did, but no one at Sweet Pines High cared about that, especially not the kids, and especially not the ones who thought TikTok trends were more important than tact. Miranda had taken the job as a substitute teacher 3 months ago. It was supposed to be temporary, helping out in the special ed department while their regular aide was on maternity leave. The principal, Mr. Fielding, had welcomed her warmly enough, but the moment she stepped into the staff lounge with her cane, with her military ID still tucked inside her wallet like a relic from a different life, she could feel it, pity and performance, not respect, not understanding. She never asked for accommodations. She arrived early, stayed late, and never mentioned her leg unless someone asked. But the students noticed. High schoolers noticed everything. That day started like most others. She parked in the staff lot, using the handicap placard issued by the VA. She hated that thing. It felt like a label stamped to her windshield, but her orthopedic surgeon had insisted. She grabbed her tote, locked her car, and made the slow, practiced walk across the blacktop toward the side entrance. The laughter started before she reached the door. "Yo, check it out. The pirate's back," someone whispered behind her. She didn't flinch. Didn't look. Another voice chimed in, mockingly upbeat. "Someone cue the I Am Titanium soundtrack." The doors slammed shut behind her, their voices muffled, but the heat on the back of her neck lingered. She didn't need to see their faces to know the culprits. Tommy Jenkins, Jr. Football. Mediocre GPA. Unremarkable except for the volume of his mouth and the cruelty of his jokes. He ran the back hallway like a stage, always performing for his little pack, 2 other boys, one of whom Miranda heard once ask a math teacher if veterans got discount grades too. Inside the classroom, she paused to let the ache in her hip settle. Then she flipped on the lights, pulled out her clipboard, and wrote the day's objectives on the board in neat block letters. She loved this room. It was small, worn down like the rest of the school, but it was peaceful. The kids she worked with here, autistic, dyslexic, anxious, misunderstood, they got it. They saw her cane and didn't comment. They saw her leg brace under her jeans and didn't stare. One of them, Jonah, a sweet boy with a stutter and an encyclopedic knowledge of military aircraft, had once said, "You walk like you've been places." She had smiled at that. The morning passed quietly, but the trouble never stayed far. By lunch, Miranda had a headache blooming behind her eyes. She skipped the lounge, again, and ate her sandwich in the classroom. Lights dimmed. The halls outside thrummed with energy. Then the knock came. Not on the door, on the glass. She turned. There they were. Tommy, grinning like he'd won something, holding his phone up against the window. She couldn't hear it, but the sound was unmistakable. He was filming. She opened the door slowly. "Is there something you need, Mr. Jenkins?" "Nah," he said, lowering the phone but not his smirk. "Just making sure you're okay. Don't fall over or anything." His friends snickered. One of them mimicked her limp in exaggerated slow motion behind Tommy's shoulder. She looked at him. Really looked. And she didn't say a word, not because she was afraid, but because people like Tommy didn't understand strength unless it stood over them and didn't flinch. He held her gaze for a second longer than he meant to. Then he scoffed and walked off. She shut the door. Back at her desk, she stared at her phone. She had a number saved. A group she met with twice a month. A few Marines, some Navy guys, a quiet Air Force sergeant who ran the best barbecue joint in the county. They called themselves Echo 6. No drama, no titles, just a promise. You call, we come. Miranda had never used it for herself. She wasn't ready to yet, but her fingers hovered near the contact. Outside, the final bell rang. She grabbed her cane and stood. Her hip flared, like it always did at the end of the day. She grimaced slightly, then straightened her shoulders. She walked to her car, head high, pace steady. From the corner of her eye, she saw them, Tommy and his friends, waiting by the bike rack, watching her like they were waiting for something. She drove away. At home, her tiny apartment smelled like lavender oil and old coffee. The VA therapist said those scents helped trigger calm. She didn't know if that was true, but she kept them around anyway. She sat on her couch, kicked off her shoes, and stared at the ceiling. That's when her phone buzzed. A new tag, a video, posted less than an hour ago, was her, limping, captured from behind, set to circus music, captioned with clown emojis. Her breath caught in her throat. Then she saw the comment thread. Hundreds of views, dozens of laughing faces, one sentence that felt like a gut punch. She probably faked the injury for VA checks. Miranda didn't cry. She didn't scream. She opened her messages, typed one word to the Echo 6 thread. Now she hit send. Then she waited, not for revenge, for something else, for the kind of silence that made people listen. And somewhere, not far away, 6 Marines put down their beers and stood up. The first to arrive was Mike Rourke. No doorbell, no knock. Just the hollow tap of boots on concrete as he stepped into the hallway outside Miranda's apartment. She opened the door before he could reach for the handle. Mike looked the same as he always did. Worn leather jacket, shaved head, a silver ring on one hand from a marriage that didn't last past the second deployment. He gave her a nod. Nothing dramatic, just that quiet recognition that said, "We saw it." He stepped inside, glanced once around the small living room like he was checking a perimeter, then dropped into the corner armchair without a word. Miranda handed him a bottle of water. He nodded again. It was their rhythm. Efficient, wordless, necessary. 10 minutes later came Ray Scout Henderson and Lacey Drew. Scout was Army once, always grinning like he knew the punchline before the joke got told. He greeted Miranda with a soft, "Hey, ma'am," like she was someone's commanding officer, then leaned his long frame against the wall, arms crossed. Lacey, meanwhile, offered Miranda a brief hug, tight, silent, meaningful. Her left forearm bore a tattoo of coordinates she never talked about, and 3 dates she never explained. They didn't ask her what happened. They didn't need to. She simply turned the phone toward them, tapped play, and watched the room go still. Mike's jaw shifted side to side, the only sign of tension he ever showed. Lacey didn't blink. Scout let out a low whistle, but didn't smile. "It's recent?" Mike asked. "Today," Miranda replied. "Posted before I even got home." Scout asked, "You report it yet?" Miranda shook her head. "To who?" "School won't act. I've seen how they handle stuff like this. They'll review their policies, call a meeting, and tell me kids will be kids." Mike leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You want us to step in?" She hesitated. "It's not about fighting, Miranda," Lacey said. "It's about reminding people where the line is and what happens when they cross it." Miranda nodded slowly. "Yeah, I want you to come. Tomorrow." The word landed like an iron gavel. She didn't need to explain more. Echo 6 didn't operate on speeches. They moved when called. That was enough. The rest of the evening passed with quiet conversation. No rage, no plotting, just presence. The kind of presence only people who had seen too much and kept going knew how to offer. Miranda felt the weight shift just a little. Her body still hurt. Her pride was still bruised. But now, she wasn't alone. The next morning started like every other. Miranda parked in the same spot. She walked the same path across the lot. Her cane hit the pavement with its usual rhythm. But today there were 6 others behind her. Not beside, not ahead, behind, moving with her but never overtaking her. Mike, Scout, Lacey, 2 others, Derek Wolfe, the quiet Marine sniper, and Terrence Cole, former Navy and current gym owner who looked like he could lift a truck if someone gave him a reason. They didn't say a word, not to her, not to each other, and definitely not to the students who stood slack-jawed at the sight of 6 veterans walking silently behind their disabled substitute teacher. The silence did what no speech ever could. Miranda stepped into the school, badge clipped to her bag, cane tapping in time with her boot. The halls were loud as usual, slamming lockers, bursts of laughter, sneaker squeaks on waxed linoleum. But then a hush began to follow her. like someone turned down the volume knob on the whole building. She reached her classroom, opened the door, walked in. The 5 veterans peeled off, spreading through the school. None of them disrupted anything. They didn't speak unless spoken to. They stood in corners, leaned casually against lockers, talked to no one. And yet every student noticed them. Tommy noticed first. He was sitting near the front entrance, eating an egg sandwich, talking loud enough for the cafeteria to hear him. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Derek Wolfe watching him. Just watching, no scowl, no glare, just calm, steady focus. The kind you don't forget. Tommy blinked, unsure whether to keep chewing or run. In the main hallway, Lacey stood just past the senior lockers. A girl in oversized headphones walked by and did a double take. Lacey nodded once at her, then turned to face the wall, her Echo 6 patch barely visible under her jacket. The girl walked on, but looked back twice. Scout drifted past the gym, tossing a baseball in the air, catching it without looking. A coach poked his head out of the office and paused. "You here with the VA?" the coach asked. Scout just smiled. "Here for a friend." "Copy that." Third period rolled in like usual, but something about the building was different. Students walked softer. Teachers noticed. Even Mr. Fielding, the principal, looked out his office window and frowned at the subtle shift. He stepped out and approached Mike, who stood beside the bulletin board near the library. "Can I help you?" Fielding asked. Mike looked him up and down. "You already could." Fielding stiffened. "Excuse me? You've got kids mocking a disabled vet on your campus, filming her, posting it. She still showed up today. Maybe it's time you did, too." "I wasn't aware." "Now you are." Mike walked away. Miranda stayed in her room. She didn't need to monitor what was happening. She already felt it. By lunch, the video was gone, deleted. But not before someone else had saved a copy. Not before it had been reported. Enough before parents started calling. One kid, a sophomore named Eli, peeked into Miranda's classroom that afternoon. "Miss Lawson? Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what those guys did. It wasn't right. And thank you for your service and stuff." She smiled. "Thank you, Eli. That means a lot." He nodded, turned, then paused. "Who are those people?" Miranda's smile grew a little. "Just friends." That evening the school sent a message to all parents. A formal investigation was underway. The administration condemned harassment of any kind and promised swift action. But the real message had already been sent. No one forgot the silence. No one forgot the walk. And no one forgot that sometimes the loudest kind of power is when 6 Marines don't say a word. The silence had done its job, but now came the tremor beneath it. By Monday morning, the school was different. Tense, watchful, and a little quieter than usual. Something had shifted. Not just among the students, but in the adults, too. Teachers glanced at Miranda in the hallway with something like admiration. Or guilt. Maybe both. Some nodded as she passed. One teacher, Mrs. Reyes from the science wing, even whispered, "We saw what happened. We should have said something sooner." Miranda had nodded, but said nothing. She wasn't here for thanks. She wasn't here for pity, either. She was here because her presence, unshaken, meant something. The kids didn't need speeches, they needed examples. The Echo 6 veterans didn't return that day, and they didn't need to. Their absence now echoed just as loud as their presence had. Students looked over their shoulders like shadows still lingered behind the lockers. Rumors flew. Some said the men were undercover military police sent in to investigate bullying. Others swore Miranda used to be a Navy SEAL and had called in special forces. Let them wonder. Miranda smiled to herself when she overheard one boy mutter, "Don't mess with her. She knows people." But the real confrontation was still coming. During 5th period, Miranda was called to the main office. She walked there without hurry. The pain in her hip flared slightly as she climbed the stairs, but she'd learned long ago how to hide a wince. That, more than anything, was what combat taught her, how to carry pain without spilling it on anyone else. Inside the office, Mr. Fielding sat behind his desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked like a man trying to balance 6 grenades with one hand. Across from him sat 2 adults, Janet Jenkins and Roger Jenkins. Tommy's parents. The moment Miranda walked in, Janet's jaw tightened. Roger didn't look at her. He just stared at a spot on the desk, as if trying to pretend she wasn't there. "Miss Lawson," Fielding said, standing quickly. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." She sat slowly, cane resting across her knees. "We're here to discuss the incident last week," he said. "The video, the fallout." Janet cut in. "My son has been vilified. The entire community is talking about him like he's a criminal. There are grown men threatening him." "Grown men, Mr. Fielding. That's unacceptable." Miranda said nothing. She just listened. Janet continued, voice rising. "He's a child, and he made a stupid joke. That's all it was. A joke." Miranda finally looked at her. "It wasn't a joke to me." Roger shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking toward Miranda, then quickly away. Janet scoffed. "Oh, come on. You're a veteran, right? Surely you've heard worse in your time." "Yes," Miranda said, "but not from children I was hired to teach." Fielding raised a hand. "Let's all stay calm. We're trying to resolve this with dignity." "What dignity is there in grown men stalking high school students?" Janet snapped. "My son was terrified." Miranda folded her hands. Her voice was steady, low. "Did your son apologize?" "He's not going to apologize for being intimidated." "I didn't ask if he apologized for being intimidated. I asked if he apologized for filming a disabled woman without consent, mocking her injuries and posting it for public humiliation." The room went quiet. Roger cleared his throat. "We didn't know he posted it. It wasn't... We didn't raise him to be like that." "Then this is a good time to teach him something," Miranda said. "About consequences and character." Fielding looked between them, clearly relieved she hadn't raised her voice. "We're suspending him for 5 days. Mandatory sensitivity training. And he's off the football team until the season ends." Janet stood. "That's ridiculous." "Not negotiable," Fielding replied, firmer than before. Janet glared at Miranda. "You think this makes you a hero?" "No," Miranda said quietly. "I already served my country. I don't need to prove anything to you." The door closed behind the Jenkins parents a little harder than necessary. Fielding sat back and exhaled. "You handled that better than I would have." "I didn't come here to win arguments," Miranda said, "just to teach." He nodded. "I hope you stay with us after the semester ends." She gave a small smile. "That depends if you want someone who limps down your hallways." "Miss Lawson," Fielding said, "you don't limp, you lead." The next few days passed in strange quiet. Students whispered less and watched more. Tommy didn't return that week. His name fell out of conversation. A few kids came to her room privately, some to apologize, some just to say hi. One girl left a note on Miranda's desk that said, "Thank you for not leaving when they gave you every reason to." But the most unexpected moment came Friday afternoon. Miranda was walking to her car, alone for once, when she heard a voice behind her. "Miss Lawson?" She turned. It was Jonah, the sweet student from her special education class. He looked nervous, holding something behind his back. "I made something." He stepped forward and handed her a small wooden carving, a cane, not a full one, just a miniature version. On the side, carved with trembling letters, E6. "I saw it on your friend's jacket," Jonas said. "I didn't know what it meant, but I figured maybe it's something good." Miranda felt her throat tighten. She crouched slightly, not easy on her hip, and looked him in the eyes. "It means you're not alone," she said. "And sometimes silence can speak louder than anything else." Jonah nodded solemnly. "You're the bravest person I know." She looked at the carving again, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like the one who had to carry the weight. She slipped the carving into her pocket and smiled, not because the war was over, but because, finally, she wasn't fighting it by herself. Saturday morning came with the kind of stillness that felt like something was waiting. Miranda didn't sleep in. Her body rarely let her, even when she tried. The pain in her hip made sure of that. But she didn't mind today. She had a reason to be up early. There was an email from Mr. Fielding waiting when she checked her phone. The local news reached out. They heard about what happened. "Want to do a story?" Your call. Miranda stared at it for a long moment. She set the phone down and didn't reply. By 10, she was walking through the doors of the Sweet Pines Community Center, cane tapping lightly against the floor. Inside, tables were being set up, banners rolled out. Veteran Appreciation Day had been planned months ago, but no one had expected it to mean something more. Not like this. She hadn't told Echo 6 to come. She didn't need to. They would be there. As she entered the main hall, Mike Rourke was already setting up folding chairs, his jacket tossed over a railing, Echo 6 patch gleaming like a ghost from his past. Scout balanced a tray of donuts like it was live ordnance, grinning the whole time. Lacey directed a couple of teenage volunteers who didn't even blink at her Marine-issue bark. Terrence Cole arrived next, carrying a stack of gym flyers and a large red cooler filled with water bottles. Derek Wolfe followed, silent as always, posted up near the entrance like a statue carved from pure calm. Miranda walked past them with a nod and a soft morning, and they responded in kind. Quiet, unassuming, but unmistakably present. That was how they operated. No need to make noise, just be there. People started arriving in a slow, steady stream. Not just veterans. Students, teachers, parents, a few folks from town Miranda didn't even know by name. Word had spread. Someone had passed the story along, reshaped it in conversations and comment threads and back porch whispers. They weren't coming to make a spectacle. They were coming because they knew silence deserved to be witnessed to. And then something strange happened. Something small. A group of students walked in. 4 of them. 2 girls, 2 boys. Not the ones who had mocked Miranda, but the ones who had watched. The ones who had laughed quietly or said nothing at all. They approached her slowly, their steps uncertain. One of them, Lena Patel, a junior with sharp eyes and a nervous smile, stepped forward. Miss Lawson, I just wanted to say we should have stopped it. We didn't, and that was wrong. Another student nodded. You didn't deserve that. You've done more for this town than half the people who've lived here their whole lives. Miranda nodded slowly, her eyes softening. Thank you for saying that. It matters. Lena hesitated. Can we stay? Help with setup or something? Miranda looked around the room, then back at them. Grab a tablecloth? They scattered, eager to be useful. Maybe trying to prove something. Maybe just trying to grow. She didn't need to know the reason. All she needed to see was that they were here. Around noon, the hall was full. Rows of chairs were taken. People stood against the walls, chatting quietly. A local brass band set up in the corner, playing a soft rendition of America the Beautiful that managed to be respectful without feeling heavy. Fielding stood at the podium and tapped the mic. We didn't come today expecting to make a statement, he began, but sometimes the best statements aren't planned. They just walk in on their own 2 feet. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Miranda sat near the front, her cane leaning against the chair, her posture straight. She felt the eyes on her, but for once it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a light. Fielding continued. We talk a lot about what it means to serve, about uniforms, medals, deployments. But service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It shows up in classrooms, in hallways, in silence, in the strength not to respond with anger, but to lead with presence. He turned slightly toward Miranda. Miss Lawson reminded us what that looks like, and because of that, we're reminded who we are as a community. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It wasn't standing room explosive, but it was true. People clapped with both hands and full hearts. Afterward, people came forward in waves. A grandmother who'd lost a son in Iraq squeezed Miranda's hand and whispered, "He would have liked you." A middle-aged man with a Vietnam hat saluted her and didn't say a word. She returned the gesture with a small nod. Lacey whispered to her, "You ready for the surprise?" Miranda raised an eyebrow. "What surprise?" But before Lacey could answer, the doors at the back opened, and in walked Tommy Jenkins. Not alone. His parents were with him. Roger looked pale. Janet clutched her purse like it might run away if she let go. Tommy stepped forward, hands in his hoodie, eyes fixed on Miranda. The room went quiet. Even the band stopped playing. He swallowed hard. "Ms. Lawson," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry." Someone coughed near the back, but no one laughed. "I didn't think about what I was doing. I just thought it was funny. But it wasn't. It was cruel. And you didn't deserve it. Nobody does." Miranda watched him for a long moment. Then she stood. Her hip screamed as she rose, but she didn't show it. She stepped toward him, slowly, cane in hand, and met his eyes. "Thank you for saying that," she said. Tommy looked relieved, but she wasn't done. "I don't want your apology to end here," she added. "I want it to matter. So next week, I want you helping in the special ed classroom during lunch. Every day. Learn what strength really looks like." Tommy nodded, hard. "Yes, ma'am." Janet looked like she might protest, but Roger touched her arm. She said nothing. The room slowly resumed its rhythm. Music started again. The mood lifted. Later that afternoon, Miranda stood outside the center, the sun casting long shadows across the sidewalk. She watched as people left in small groups, some smiling, some thoughtful. Lacey stepped beside her. "You did good. I didn't do anything. You stood there. You didn't back down." "That's not nothing." Mike joined them. "Next time someone mocks a vet in this town, they'll think twice. That's something you started." Miranda looked at the cane in her hand, the miniature one Jonah gave her, now clipped to her keychain. "I didn't think this would matter this much." Mike shrugged. "The strongest stands are the ones you take when nobody's watching. This one, everybody saw it." Miranda exhaled slowly. A weight she'd carried for years felt just a little lighter. Across the street, a girl waved at her. "Lena." Miranda waved back. A car horn honked gently behind her, and she turned to see Terrence in his pickup, window down. "You need a ride?" he asked. She smiled. "No," she said. "I'll walk." And she did, not because it was easy, but because this time she wasn't walking alone.